geometry. We've got a couple new vocab words that I want to talk about today. We're going to be dealing with a whole bunch of angles in a whole bunch of scenarios, and the idea is just to get really, really good at recognizing and identifying and calculating what an angle measurement is going to be. So we've got a couple vocab words that are going to, the first two are going to help us talk about some of the angles, and the third word, transversals, is going to be a new type of angle, or something that creates angles, rather, that we'll need to be familiar with over the next couple of days. And then we'll talk about parallel lines just a little bit. So complementary. If two angles are complementary, that means that angle 1 plus angle 2 is 90 degrees. Okay? Now there are a whole bunch of ways that we can have two angles be complementary. If one is 50 degrees and the other is 40, they're complementary. If one is 30 and one is 60, if one's 45 and the other is 45, if one angle is 1 and the other angle is 89, those will be complementary. So any two angles that add together to give me a 90-degree angle will be complementary. Supplementary, on the other hand, is that angle 1 plus angle 2 is 180. And we talked about these before. Like, we know that 90 is a really important angle measurement. We know that 180 is a really important angle measurement. If you think about linear angles, for example, that we talked about in the last year quite a bit, like, we know that any pair of linear angles are going to be supplementary because we are creating this 180-degree angle. This angle plus this angle has to equal 180 degrees. So we know why 180 is important. It makes that straight line. And a 90-degree angle is important because that's making corners for us, which is what we want. And we really like corners. The difference between like a supplementary and like a linear angle is both supplementary and complementary do not necessarily have to be next to each other. For example, if I have an angle right here, and I say that this is a 42-degree angle, and I have an angle over here, and I say that that is a 48-degree angle, those two angles are complementary because they add up to equal 90 degrees. They do not have to be in the same spot and share a vertex. Now, it's really infrequent that we're going to have angles like this that are super far away and just kind of hanging out in space. But there are some cases, especially when we get into some transversal things, where they're not going to be right next to each other, so it's not going to be as easy to tell what's going on. Okay? So complementary is 90, supplementary is 180. Transversal. Now these two are about angles. Transversal is actually a line. If I have two lines frequently parallel, okay, so I've got two lines here, so I should mark them as lines. A transversal is something that travels over both of them. Okay? So this line right here is my transversal because it's cutting across both of these two lines. So it traverses, trans actually, the prefix there means that it's going across something like the transatlantic, that's a pipeline, the Transamerican Railway. Trans means like you're going over something, all the way through it. So transversal is going all the way through both of these lines. Okay? So complementary means two angles add up to be 90. Supplementary means we add them together to be 180. And a transversal is going to cut across two lines. Let me go ahead. I'm going to pause this while I erase. And then there's one more thing that I kind of want to look at today. Poof! I hope that looks cool. It probably did. All right. So we've got just a handful of things here that I want to cover in addition to what I talked about before. So we have this transversal. Okay? Nice, lovely transversal. And notice that these two lines are parallel. And that's going to be really important. Because what happens is, when these two are parallel, then all of these angles and all of these angles are essentially the same. So we have a whole bunch of either congruent angles, and remember, congruent means that they have equal measures. So we have a whole bunch of congruent measures. We also have a whole bunch of supplementary angles. Supplementary, remember, means that they add up together to equal 180 degrees. So we're going to spend a little bit of time right now just talking about the relationships between all of these angles. I'm going to label them here. My blue is a bit better. Sorry, that was a little squeaky. So I've labeled them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? I've also labeled some other things here that are going to be important. Exterior. So exterior, if you think about the exterior of a house or exterior painting, for those of you that have spent some time painting recently, there's both interior and exterior paint. Exterior means it's outside. You want exterior paint because it's a little bit harder. Okay? So exterior paint is on the outside. So we've got exterior of these transversals as well. Okay? Exterior is on the outside. So all of this space up here and all of this space down here is my exterior in this transversal situation. And everything in here is the interior. We are inside those parallel lines. Okay? So we're inside, we're outside. We're in the exterior, we're in the interior. Follow that. Okay? So those are some important words. Exterior is outside, interior means inside, or in this case, like in between. The other word that we're going to need to focus on is alternate. Alternate means that we are talking about the alternate side of the transversal. So if I'm on this side, the alternate side would be this one. So alternate means we're on opposite sides. Okay? For example, angle 4 and angle 3 would be on alternate sides. 4 and 7 would be an alternate side because we're on opposite sides. 4 and 5 would be the same side. Okay? 1 and 8 are on the same side. 3 and 8 are alternate because we're on opposite sides. Okay? So inside, outside, and alternate meaning the opposite sides. If they're on the same side, we just call it the same side. I told you before. I'll say it again. We're not that clever when we name things in geometry. We pretty much just call them what they are. Okay? So, because all of these angles match up with all of these angles, we've got a whole bunch of congruencies here. For example, angle 1 and angle 5 are congruent. We've got angle 2 and angle 6 will be congruent. Angle 3 and angle 7 are congruent. 4 and 8. Okay? So the angles up here are all congruent to the angles down here. Okay? As long as they're in the same side. The corresponding angles. They're in the same spot. They're in the same place. Okay? They're my same spot angles. Okay, that's an important thing that you need to know. Corresponding is the technical term. But just remember that the angles that are in the same spots are going to have the same measurements. Now, if I look at angle 1, which is an exterior angle, and I look at angle 7, which is the alternate exterior angle, so alternate means it's the other side and exterior. Okay? So these are alternate exterior angles. What do we notice about number 1 and 7? Well, they look pretty much the same. And they, in fact, are. Think about that for a moment. If I look just at this intersection up top, I know 1 and 3 are congruent because they're vertical angles. I promised you they were going to come up a lot. 1 and 3 are vertical angles. 3 is congruent to 7. And if 1 is congruent to 3 and 3 is congruent to 7, then 1 must also be congruent to 7. That's going back to that logic unit that we talked about before, okay? If A, then B. If B, then C. A, therefore C, okay? If 1 is the same as 3, if 3 is the same as 7, then 1 must also be the same as 7. So alternate exterior angles are going to be congruent. If you look at the other side as well, that is that 2 and 8 are also alternate exterior angles, okay? So 2 and 8 are also congruent. 2 and 4 are vertical angles. 4 and 8 are those corresponding angles. So 2 and 8 are also congruent. All alternate exterior angles are congruent if they are parallel lines. Okay? So that's alternate exterior. We also have like alternate interior. Alternate interior would be now on the inside, but opposite sides. So 4 on the opposite side, but still on the interior, we're looking at 6 now. So 4 and 6, we will notice, are also congruent for basically the same reasons. 4 is congruent to 2, 2 is congruent to 6. Therefore, 4 must also be congruent to 6. Okay? What we worked on last week with like this as a linear pair, if I gave you the measurement of angle 1, you could calculate the angle measurement for 2. You would take 180 minus 1 and get 2. They're supplementary. They add up to be 180. Last unit, you should have also been able to notice that 2 and 4 are congruent, and 1 and 3 are congruent. So everything that I'm doing today is actually stuff we've already done. And the only piece I'm adding is that these 4 angles are congruent to these 4 angles. And I want to explain that when I'm talking about alternate exterior or alternate interior, same side interior, and all these things. Like 4 has both the same side interior angle of my partner and an alternate exterior partner. Because like I could be talking about same side interior would be 4 and 5, the alternate interior would be 4 and 6. Okay? Kind of the same way that 4 and 2 are vertical angles and 1 and 3 are vertical angles. So 3 by itself is not a vertical angle, but 1 and 3 together are. It's kind of it's more of a description of the relationship between those two than a description of any one specific angle. Okay, like when you're trying to describe the relationship with a significant other that you've been with for a little while, and then you have to introduce them into the title, which is kind of awkward. Okay, this is all about the relationship. Okay, 1 to 3 are congruent because they're vertical. 2 to 4 are congruent because they're vertical. 1 and 2 are supplementary because they're linear. 4 and 3 are supplementary. But keep in mind, too, that 1 and 4 are also supplementary. So we've talked about alternate exterior. They alternate sides and are on the outside. 2 and 8 are alternate exterior. 4 and 6 are alternate interior. 3 and 5 are alternate interior. So let's talk about some same side angles. Okay? And we know that alternate interior and alternate exterior are all congruent. Okay? So same side means that I'm looking at, for example, same side interior means I'm looking at interior angles on the inside that are on the same side. So 4 and 5, or 3 and 6. And what you'll notice about same side interior angles is that they are always supplementary. So angle 4 plus angle 5 will always give me 180 degrees. Angle 3 plus angle 6 will always give me 180 degrees. And you can actually do the same thing over here. So if you look at same side exterior, same thing. 2 and 7 are on the same side, but on the outside. 2 and 7 will be supplementary. 1 and 8 will be supplementary. Okay? So almost every set of angles, if I choose an angle and another angle at random, it will be one of two things. It will either be supplementary, meaning I could add the two together to get 180, or they will be congruent. Okay? And a lot of that is based off of two things. Vertical angles, and that these 4 angles and these 4 angles, because of the parallel lines, are going to be congruent. Okay? So this set of angles and this set of angles will end up being the same. Okay? Today what I want to do is just work out some identification stuff. Tomorrow I think we'll actually get some problems in calculating the angles and things like that. So I gotta stop there because I have to stop